could it be? But me, your man, Louie Tee, here with a brand new installment of Louie's Lurking in the Comments. We're live. Like I told you before, this isn't going to be a live production most weeks, but I have found that it is very convenient to do it live. But when time dictates that I can do this in a local upload setting, that's probably how it's going to go. But this weekend was busy, and so I didn't have the time to get this mapped out via a local upload. So here we are doing this now. But this is something that I do want to bring to you every week during this off season. So I thought that the comments this week were fantastic, just like they were last week. I thought you guys killed it last week. You crushed it again this week. So I wanted to make sure that I got this in. So with that said, let's not delay. Let's get right to the proceedings this evening and jump into, I think, one of 3 live streams that we will be in the comment section of, and then we will be in the comment section of 2 local upload videos from the past week. So let's dive right in. And I also want to make the zoom bigger on these so that we can see. So let me make sure that, there we go. Now we talking. All right. So let me see what size that is so I know moving forward that's what we want. Okay. I got it. So this was, as you can see, from the realistic expectations for the 2024 class, which was the first draft class of Adam Peters and company, and his rookie incoming class from 2025, those 5 picks that were made this spring. What are some realistic expectations for both the second-year guys and the rookies going into this upcoming season? So we had a very in-depth conversation. You know, I brought numbers. I talked about what guys did last year, what I expect from them this year, what I think are realistic expectations for some of those players this upcoming season. I talked about the rookies coming in, what I think their roles are going to be, and, you know, what are some things that we may be able to expect from them in their inaugural NFL season. So, first comment that caught my eye was from QDog 2021. And he wrote, he thought Mikey had 3 interceptions, 2 versus Detroit and 1 versus Baltimore. So quickly, just to answer that, Mikey had 4 interceptions last year, 2 in the regular season. Okay, the one that you omitted was the one against New Orleans, right? Had a first half. Should have had 2 in that game, if you recall. Caught one early in that game. Should have had one right before halftime. Dropped that one, though. So that was a part of the 16 interceptions that we could have dropped that Joe Witt Jr. claims we had our hands on last year. I think that number is closer to 10 than it is 20. However, he's not wrong. We did drop quite a few. Mikey dropped one in that game, but he did catch one in that game as well. So 2 in the regular season, Baltimore, New Orleans, and then the 2 against Detroit. So Ivy all day writes, I don't think JD5 fumbled the ball once last year. Wow, that's amazing. So I brought up, when I was talking about Jaden, he's a part of that 2024 class. I call it the foundational class from AP, setting the stage for what's to come over the next decade plus. And I said, I don't remember. And I said, look, don't quote me here. I just, you know, my memory's pretty sharp. But I just couldn't recall him fumbling the ball. I said, I'm pretty sure he did fumble. I just don't remember him fumbling. I know we didn't lose any of his fumbles. I can assure you of that. And I think somebody in the comment section said that he had lost, you know, or that he had fumbled maybe 3 or 4 times last year. But you also have to keep in and take into consideration that a fumble is anytime you lose control of the football in the field of play. I can remember twice last year very vividly, Jaden running towards the sidelines and the ball getting knocked out of his hands out of bounds. Like, it was a meaningless fumble, but it counts as a fumble nonetheless. So even if that number is 3 or 4, 2 or 3 of them might have legitimately been Jaden's literally, a half yard away from out of bounds. And as he's taking that step out of bounds, somebody pushes him, the ball comes out of his hand. Well, that's technically a fumble, and they're going to count it as a fumble, but it's not legitimately a fumble, right? In the field of play where you're like, oh my God, he got hit from behind, the ball comes out, whatever. So the fact that he didn't lose a single fumble last year speaks volumes. Now, again, you can't expect that to be the case every year, obviously, but you watch some of these quarterbacks around the league that are dynamic, like a Josh Allen, for instance. He's a fumbling machine, is Josh Allen, right? Our guy didn't put it on the ground once and we lost it. So I think, and that's part of his DNA. That's, he talks about Herm Edwards' impact on him, and Herm Edwards telling him, don't turn the ball over. Like, if you want to excel as an NFL quarterback, the first thing that you have to do is take care of the football. And I think that resonates with him. And the lack of fumbles, I think, is just another example of him taking the advice of someone that gave him dropped a gem on his melon and gave him some jewels early on in his career, and that, really sticking with him. Mamba Fats writes, I think Luke will be back there on kickoffs because if Jalen starts cooking, teams are going to kick away from him, and I think they're going to put Luke on the other side because even though Austin was an all-pro, he's concussion prone, and they want to save him just as a running back. I think that is a very astute observation. I don't necessarily agree with it all the way. I do think that they are very cognizant of Eckler and his concussion situation. Thus, I think that they are going to be very selective as to when they put him back there. If you recall, in the NFC Championship game last year, they did not put him back there until we had the fumble from Jeremy McNichols. So they really, when Eckler came back that last time, his final game, he got hurt in the first Dallas game. He did not come back until the second Dallas game, which was the final game of the regular season. So he didn't return kickoffs in that Dallas game. He did not return kickoffs in that Tampa game. He did not return kickoffs in the Detroit game. He did not return kickoffs up until the fumble. So the first half of that Eagles game, they were looking for a spark late in that game, so they stuck him back there. I don't know if they've had conversations with Austin, how they view, his usage. I don't think they've had any conversation with him. If they feel like he gives them the best option back there, they're going to put him back there. But I think, to your point, if they can avoid putting him back there, they will. You can't avoid kicking from someone with these kickoff rules, the way it's set up. I mean, you can try to angle it away from a guy. So let's say that for me, honestly, there's no way to kick away from a guy because you can take a guy, right? You don't have to, like the traditional old way, one guy on one side, one guy on the other side. You don't have to do that, right? Just take Jalen and put him right in the middle of the football field. Because with these kickoff rules, you're not going to have somebody bearing down on you because they can't move until you catch the ball or the ball lands in the field of play. So you've got time. If you're standing in the middle and that ball goes in the air and they try to kick it all the way to the right side, you've got time to get under that football, catch it, gather yourself, and then make a move, right? Because nobody's going to be breathing down your neck as you catch that football. So you can have someone up a little bit further in that landing zone, just in case they try to kick a dirty kick and it goes somewhere else. But to me, Jalen will be the guy. If I'm having it set up, I won't have one on one side, one on the other side, because that'll make it easy for you to kick away from someone. If he's having success, just put him in the middle. Just put him in the middle. So I do think it'll be hard to kick away from him, and I don't think Luke's going to be back there at all. I don't think he's going to be back there, but he could be back there. He wasn't terrible back there. And if they're looking for other ways to utilize Luke, I honestly believe it's going to be Deebo Samuel that has a chance to be back there more so than Luke. But again, because of the importance of Debo to the offense, I don't think he'll be back there every single time, but I think they'll pick their spots where Debo is back there. Maybe Jalen Lane is accompanying him, or it's Debo and Eckler or whoever. You know, they'll pick their spots. I think Lane is going to be back there as one of the guys permanently in his rookie season. And it wouldn't shock me if it's Eckler back there with him, if it's Debo back there with him, or to your point, Luke is back there with him. But the guy that they want returning to football is probably going to be Jalen Lane or Debo Samuel or Austin Eckler. It won't be Luke McCaffrey, more likely than not. So we'll see. And as far as Austin is concerned, yes, that is a thing that you have to take into consideration. You're absolutely right. And I think that they still will put him back there if they see it being, especially if his role becomes minimized on offense with the emergence of, say, a Bill or someone of that ilk starts to step up, and, you know, B-Rob is playing well and Bill is getting more touches and Eckler becomes a little less part of the offense, which it's hard for me to envision that because Eckler still brings something to the table that the other two don't, which is the ability to catch the football out of the backfield consistently. So I can't see his role in the offense being minimized that much, even if there's still, you know, his amount of touches decreases. Maybe his carries go to Bill, but he still is a guy that they want in there on third downs to catch it, to pass protect, et cetera, et cetera. So it'll be interesting to see if Eckler gets back there on kickoffs or not. Calvin Person, 9732, writes, Commander Lou, we need 2 players from each draft to ball this year. For me, I need more out of Johnny Newton and Ben Sinnott. 2 second-round picks who were below average, except Ben did block well, but I need at least 30 catches this year and 3 touchdowns. As one of the other numbers, he should be open. Amos and Lane for this year, we need some deep plays from Lane and some big team plays. JD will have less than 12 turnovers, but 35 touchdown passes, finally giving us a 30-plus season. So let's break this thing down in parts. So he needs more out of Johnny Newton and Ben Sinnott. I think that is a reasonable ask. I don't think that there is anything wrong with requesting more out of 2 guys you spent second-round picks on. So, and I think most of us expect them to be better this year in year 2. He says Amos and Lane are the 2 guys he's looking for big things out of this year. Again, we're putting a lot on rookies. Amos, I'm hearing people, you know, Rio has already started the campaign for him being the number 1 corner this year. I'm not so much on that same, you know, plane as of yet. I'm going to respect the process, but I am expecting him to be a legitimate number 2 for now. And Jalen Lane, I immediately expect an impact from him as a special teams player. I'm not counting on production from him as a wide receiver this year, but I expect him to contribute to this team, even if only in a special teams capacity. Anything we get from him on the offensive side is found money, right? That's an added benefit. I'm not looking for that. I'm not clocking him for wide receiver production. That's why we got all these other guys here. If he can add anything, which he can, to the receiver room on offense, great, excellent. You know, and I expect him to have his hand in the wide receiver offensive production category, but it's not something I'm clocking him for. If he has a tremendous impact on special teams, he's done his job as a rookie 4th-round pick right away. Can he stretch the field vertically? We'll find out. He should be able to, but we need somebody to do it opposite of Terry. He might be the man for the job. We'll see. I said that I thought Jaden Daniels would have slightly more turnovers than he did last year because he was so clean last year. I think he had 9 interceptions, no fumbles. He turned it over less than 10 times last year. So if he turns it over less than 12, let's say the number's 11, that's more than he did last year. That's what I was saying. Like, I don't think he's going to be this turnover machine this year. I'm not suggesting that he's going to throw 13 interceptions and fumble 5 times for a total of 18 turnovers. I just think he's going to have more than he had. I mean, he had less than double-digit turnovers as a rookie. You know how rare that is? To play in all 17 games, to start all 17 games, then play in the postseason. And to only throw it, he had one turnover in the postseason, and that was the interception he threw against the Eagles in garbage time. Like, the man had 10 total turnovers last year if you count the postseason, 9 in the regular season. I can't imagine him taking care of the football at that high of a rate again. And I hope I'm wrong, because this is who he is by nature. You go back and look at his collegiate career, I think the most interceptions he had was like his second year at Arizona State. I think he had 10 interceptions. Like, he doesn't turn it over a ton. So, but the thing that resonates here is the 35 touchdown passes. We've never had, which Calvin is speaking to this, we've never had a quarterback toss 30 or more touchdown passes in a single season, which doesn't seem like a lot with the way the NFL is set up now and the rule changes and all of that. Feels like you should be able to throw for more than 30 touchdown passes, but it's tough to throw for 30 touchdown passes, right? You just think, break down what it would take to get you 30 touchdown passes in a season. You'd need to be just a shade under 2 a game, roughly, right? So you think, okay, you're going to have games where you throw 3 or 4. You may have a game where you throw 1 or none, but all it takes is 2 or 3 games of 1 or none, right? And don't have that 1-4 touchdown pass game. Don't have 2 or 3 threes to make up for the 0 or the 1 games. And you'll find yourself with less than 30. And that's where most NFL quarterbacks find themselves on a yearly basis. It's hard to throw for over 30 touchdown passes. We should know. Nobody's done it in our franchise's history. Maybe until now. Maybe Jaden Daniels is able to do it in year 2 of his career. 35 is a big number. It's a big number. We'll see. We'll see, Calvin. The Mike Lowry, right? Just notice even our preseason game is on Monday Night Football. Shaking my head. We can't even get a 1 p.m. preseason game, LOL. I know you're one of the very few who are not thrilled with the new scheduling, right? You had become accustomed to the 1 o'clock kick on Sunday, and you had a regimented schedule, fixed around the game being at 1, so that the rest of the day was yours to do whatever you wanted to do with it. Those days are gone, man. This is our new existence. So it may take a little getting used to for some of you. But this is who we are now. And yes, even the preseason, we're not safe. But again, Jaden's a rock star. He is, and this won't, like, this doesn't go away. I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes, right? I've already said this. There are only 3 teams with 8 primetime games, standalone games this season in the league. 2 of them earned it. 1 of them didn't. Dallas didn't earn it. They're just America's team. Air quotes. But, I mean, they move the needle. Doesn't matter who they're playing. They move the needle. So there are more Cowboys fans, I believe, because they're a fair weather fan base. There are more Cowboys fans out there than any other fans in the NFL. Thus, you put them on, you're going to move the needle. Hence, they get 8. But Kansas City with Mahomes, they earned 8 because of Patrick Mahomes. And we got 8 because of Jaden Daniels. Like, that's not a coincidence. So this is our new existence. If he continues to do what he did last year, ain't no going back. The NFL wants to see how he handles this spotlight, how this team, for that matter, handles this spotlight. Because they're putting us squarely in the crosshairs of the NFL, right? By putting us on this pedestal, by saying, hey, we're going to put you on the biggest stage in front of the brightest lights, half of your schedule, right? Half of your schedule. Nobody else is playing when you play. Half of your schedule. 8 of your 17 games, no one else is on but you. That says a lot. So toss in a preseason game That makes it 9. Okay. So you know what it is this year. This is our opportunity. This is Jaden's opportunity. This is the Commanders' opportunity to prove that they belong. If they do that, this is our new existence moving out, moving forward. Until something, unless we don't, hit those mile markers and somebody else comes along that's the new shiny item, this is who we are. Like, I don't know if you noticed, I talked about this. And I get it. Some teams don't have the juiciest of schedules. You play teams that people want to see, and you've got a marquee quarterback. It's easy to put that game in front of a national audience. But the Ravens aren't playing a bunch of these games, and neither are the Bills. Because if you don't get it done when it matters most, it's cool, and we still want to see you. And they still got like 4. I think each of those teams still got like 4 games on prime time, which is cool. But that's a far cry from the 8 that Mahomes has. That's a far cry from the 8 that we have. But again, the schedule also dictates that. Like, if you're playing Jacksonville, nobody wants to see that. Sorry, not sorry. You're playing Indianapolis. If we were playing the AFC South, we probably don't have 8 primetime games. Because nobody wants to see you against Indianapolis. Nobody wants to see you against Tennessee. Nobody wants to see you against Jacksonville on television. Nobody wants to watch that. The only game that might have been able to make it and pass through as a primetimer would have been us against Houston. So the fact that we play the Broncos, the Chiefs, the Chargers, those are games people would love to see on a national stage. It makes it easy for them to say, hey, you're playing Green Bay. Let's put that on national TV. Hey, you're playing Chicago. That was a great game last year, or at least a great finish last year. Let's put that on TV. Hey, you're playing Detroit. Let's make that America's Game of the Week. It's easy when you have games that people want to see. So keep that in mind as well. When you play a schedule that isn't as, juicy as the one we played this year, maybe we wouldn't have as many prime timers, but it also speaks to our quarterback and where we are in the process. So I said all of that to say this, Mike. Get used to it. Get used to it, all right? Because this isn't going away. Darren B writes, JD is a good old working class quarterback in a Gen Z body. That is a funny statement that you just made. It's I think a very accurate statement, but it's a funny one because we're going to expound upon that exact statement a little bit later on with an email that I received from someone that I want to share with you guys. It was such a great email that I can't keep this to myself. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But it literally, one of the things we will talk about in that email is this comment right here. So let's move on to the next video. And this was the OTA Phase 3 video after we had heard from various members of the staff and seen some of the clips from OTAs week 2. For OTA 3 in week 2, that was Duron Payne Day, essentially. I went live. This was the byproduct of the conversation surrounding Payne and some of the things that we saw. And these were the reactions to that video. So we're going to get into this one next. So we start this conversation with Rumteen, who writes, Witt snuck in a point that I think is overlooked. They inherited the worst defense in the NFL and took it to 18th or whatever. Now we've got a baseline and another year of their guys. Feel like Amos, Kane, Harris ads show we want guys who get their hands on the ball. So I think the point that Rumteen made at the very beginning is a very good one. And I do think it is overlooked. We killed the defense for not closing games, for not producing turnovers, for, not being able to stop the run adequately. Do you remember where we came from, though? And look, I'm guilty just like the rest of you. I was very critical of this defense because I think I might have been unfairly expecting this defense to be the catalyst of this team right away. Like I said that so many times last year that I began to believe it before. Remember, week 1 was eye-opening. It was eye-opening. Week 2 was an even bigger splash of cold water on the face because at least week 1, I could lie to myself. Man, they didn't play a lot of preseason. Those guys were gassed, which they were. You could see it. They wore down as that game went on. And it was you probably 90 degrees plus on the field. It was Tampa week 1. Those guys felt it in the fourth quarter. That's when they started giving up the big runs and things of that nature. But you could lie to yourself and explain away that first performance against Tampa. They're the better team. They went to the playoffs. They were in the divisional round last year. We didn't play our guys in the preseason. We were rusty. We were out of shape. We weren't ready, yada, yada, yada. Week 2 against the Giants was no excuse. If not for us not punting, them not having a place kicker, and Malik Neighbors dropping a 4th down pass, we couldn't stop them. We couldn't stop them. We should have blown the Giants out of that game. And instead, we settled for field goals and kept them alive and had them feeling like if we had a kicker, we would have beat you. No, we didn't punt the entire game. You should have lost by 50. But that didn't happen. And our defense didn't really do anything. They forced 1 fumble in that game. That was it. They didn't do much in that game. We came out of the first 2 weeks of the season, and then when you couple in the week 3 performance against Cincinnati, which was to be expected, we were the worst by a mile or 2 in 3rd down defense. And it was jarring last season. The defense was jarring in the first month. And I went, oh my God, I was wrong. It isn't the defense that's the catalyst. It's going to be the offense. This defense stinks. Now, they had their moments. They had their games when they had an inferior opponent in front. And that's one thing I got to say about this defense. And you have to keep this in mind too. We were hard on the defense. But as Rumpteen very eloquently points out, we were the worst defense the year before. We were awful. It was a joke watching this team play under Rivera. After he fired Jack Del Rio, it got even worse, which we didn't think was even possible. Poor Quan Martin in the slot with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek takes 3 steps off the line of scrimmage and puts his hand in the air. I got a bum on me. Hey, I got a baby on me. Throw me the rock. Shit was a joke. The Cowboys were eating goddamn turkey legs and shit. They put a turkey leg in the Salvation Army bell. This shit was embarrassing the year before. We were the worst team defensively. To go from that train wreck to a competent group, it wasn't great, but it was year 1, and they turned the whole roster over. I don't know why I thought that they were going to just magically wave a wand and we were going to get a Dan Quinn defense year 1. I don't know why the hell I thought that. I was out of my mind for thinking that. But I did. And the end result was overrating a unit that we should have just been excited the fact that they were no longer bottom 3rd of the NFL anymore. I said before the season, and it's crazy because I actually went back, and assessed where I thought the defense. I said, if this defense is just somewhere hovering around top half of which is where they were. I think they were 17th or 18th in the league. Total defense wise. I'm like, if they're just hovering around top half of the league, we should be elated coming from where we came from. But that's not the way we looked at it because this offense was so good. We just needed the defense to complement it, and it didn't in certain instances. Like the games where the offense was just remarkable and we played against an inferior opponent, you got to give the credit to this defense. They made sure that we blew teams out, whether it was Cleveland, Arizona, Carolina, Tennessee. They smelt blood in the water defensively, and the offense wasn't letting up, and they were scoring a bunch of points. The defense made sure that it didn't turn into a shootout. It just turned into an ass whooping, right? So you got to give them credit for that. But in the games where we played against quality NFL offenses and some where we didn't, like New Orleans, this shit turned into a damn fist fight. It turned into a fist fight. And we were fighting for our damn lives. But the reason a lot of these games didn't turn into shootouts, but just fist fights, was because the defense gave a chance. Say what you want. In the Tampa Bay game, We only scored 23 points on offense. It's not like the offense was lighting up the scoreboard. The only reason, and look, you can say what you want, but Tampa could have scored a gajillion points in that game, and we would have lost. The defense wasn't ass in that game. It wasn't. They held Tampa to. They understand that Tampa Bay was one of the best offenses in football last year. They held them to 20 points. So we can sit here and shit like Detroit. Look, they made mistakes. They made mistakes. That's not our problem. Okay. Our job isn't to critique what the Lions decided to do, to stop giving the ball to the guy that we couldn't stop in Jahmyr Gibbs. That's not our problem. They started putting the ball in hands of dummies who could throw interceptions. That's not our problem. But to go into Detroit and to hold them to 31 points, and honestly, they're getting their ass whooped in that fourth quarter. We were up big, in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes to go. We had the game in control. To go in there, and if a field goal is made by Zane Gonzalez, the game's over. To go in there and put up 40 plus, damn near 50 points, and then have the defense say, hey, we got it by forcing 5 turnovers, you got to give them some credit. It wasn't a clean performance by any stretch of the imagination, but all I'm saying is we got to give the defense more credit. I'm not telling you got to go head over heels for what they did last year, but they could have been Cincinnati last year, where it didn't matter how well you played on offense. It's a shootout. Get your guns out, get your bullets, and make sure you got more than 1 or 2 or 3 guns, and make sure you got plenty of ammunition, because you're going to need it, because we're not getting a single stop, and you're going to have to score damn near 40 if you want to win. That was what Cincinnati told their offense last year. Our defense did not tell our offense that last year. We got into a couple of shootouts. There weren't very many. Now, they got to be better this year, because we play offenses that are fully capable of turning it into a shootout. But to Rumteen's point, this was the worst defense in the league in 2023, and to turn them into a formidable unit, a solid group in 2024, got to give them credit for that. Whatever that looks like for you. Dr. Ice writes, let Duron Payne get his 11 sacks. So here we go. Let's have the Duron Payne conversation. Let's do this now, because I found this very fascinating when I put this video out and I went back and looked at the comment sections. I was actually taken aback. I did not expect the energy that was aimed at Duron Payne. I wasn't expecting that, but I get it. I just wasn't expecting it. At Dr. Ice writes, let Duron Payne get his 11 sacks and move on. He ain't that, guys. He only goes all out for the paper. This front office ain't dumb. So, by the way, this is not the only comment that felt this way. There were at least 4 or 5 more just like it. I just brought this one because this one was quick, it was to the point, and it was going to allow us to open up this conversation. So there is a sector of the fan base that is like, nah, we're not doing this shit again with him. If he balls this year, and remember, he's still got another year on his deal after this year. So even if we get payday Payne this year and they don't decide to pay him, then next year would be his real contract season. We only look at it as payday Payne this year because of what they just did to Jonathan Allen. That's like I said, shots were fired, pop, pop. And I'm pretty sure Duron heard that loud and clear. Like, yo, you see what they just did to our boy? If I ain't careful, I'm next. So I was listening to John Keim earlier today, and he made a great point that I hadn't even considered. He said of Duron Payne that his entire career, he's been in the shadows of one Jonathan Allen. And I said, huh. Interesting shit, John. He's like, everywhere he's been, they've been a package deal essentially. When they were at Alabama, who got all the shine? Remember, Allen graduated or got to the NFL 1 year before Payne, but who got the shine that whole time that they were there together at Alabama? It was always about Jonathan Allen. He's the vocal leader. He's the guy that is the alpha, so to speak, when you're talking about those two guys. You'd always go to Payne or Allen first if you wanted a soundbite. If you were looking for a leader on and off the field, you always go to Allen. Allen was the one that got double-digit sacks at Alabama. He was the one doing the Superman dive over the, running back to get to the quarterback. That was Allen, right? So then they get drafted to the same team, and he's right back in the shadows of John Allen once again. And, Allen got his contract extension first, then Payne follows him. And it was always Allen, 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 right? We talk about the Bama Wall. First guy you mentioned is Jonathan Allen, right? How many times did you guys want to trade Duron Payne before he got that 11 sacks in 2022, right? How many times did you want to trade him? That was a real thing. Well, now Allen has been removed from the equation. Daryl Tapp, in those assistant interviews that I talked about on the last video, said that Duron Payne is the alpha of that room. He is the voice. And John Kahn then went on to say, he's an elder statesman now. You forget these things. This is a relatively young team in terms of the guys that they've drafted and brought in here. Yes, it's a veteran group with the guys that they've brought in here, the Dietrich Wises, the Jonathan Joneses, the Will Harrises. Like, these are veteran players. Eddie Goldman, these are veteran guys, right? But when you think about core Redskins / Commanders / football team players, when you think about the core Washington players that were either drafted here or brought in here a long time ago and have been here, nobody's been here longer than him except for Tress Way. That's crazy when you think about it, but it's where we are now. Duron Payne is an elder statesman. He's an OG now in that, not just that defensive side of the ball, not just in that D-line room. He's an OG on the squad. When it comes to young guys that have been here for 2-3 years, Duron's been here their entire career. They don't know of too many other guys that they can say that about. There's only a handful of guys that have been here, 5+ years, because the new regime came in and cleaned house, right? The new regime came in and cleaned house. It's just Tress, it's just Duron, it's just Terry and Jeremy Reeves, right? After that, I think then you got to go to Cosme and some of those other guys that were drafted in 2021 that are still hanging on. I don't think any of the 2020 guys are left here, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. I don't think any of the 2020 guys are here. So anybody that got here prior to 2020, right? 2019, 18, 17, and Tress Way, I think, was 2016, I believe. Maybe even further back than that, but I think it was 16. That's it. That's the group. So I understand that what he did since getting paid has been underwhelming, to say the least. I get it. I'm aware. And I get the frustration that, hey, if it's paper that motivates him and that's the only time he's going to ball, then we don't need to do this again. But what if, devil's advocate I'm playing here, I'm just throwing this out here. What if Duron Payne has finally seen the light, because the light was being blocked by Jonathan Allen and he was always in the shadows, so he couldn't see the light. Now that Jonathan Allen has been removed, all of this light is now finally shining on Duron Payne, and he's ready to show out. What if that's the case? Look, I get it. At this point of your career, you are what you are. It's not like he's been in the league for 4 years and still has a chance to show that he can do this or that, like he did the last time. He's going into year 8. He probably is what he is at this point. But we've also seen him get double-digit sacks before. I don't know what is to come this season, and I don't know if he goes out and has himself one of those years again, how the organization is going to respond to that. Because as I've mentioned with several other players that have another year left, i.e. Laramie Tunzel, i.e. Marshawn Lattimore, we've seen proof of what they will do to a guy that they don't necessarily know if they want to get in bed with them long term. They'll just give them some guaranteed money and maybe some opportunities to add incentives and add more money to the money that they're already making this year based off of performance to incentivize them, but not necessarily give them, more years, more guaranteed money and an extension on their deal. They just did it with Andrew Wiley. They just did it with Deebo Samuel. So the precedence has been set. Duron has one more year on his deal after this season. He balls this year. Maybe they say, hey, we appreciate what you just did. They could just let him play out the final year of his deal. He's making good money. Or they could give him some upfront money, because my guess is, I haven't looked at the numbers because it doesn't concern me right now, because we could get to next year and they could decide to cut him. He doesn't play up to their standard this year. They could say, hey, seek a trade, just like they did Jonathan Allen. If you can't find somebody, we're going to cut you. So I'm not that invested to look it up and see how much money is this and that. But I'll just say this. When you get to the final year of an extension, most of the guarantees are already been paid out. So my guess is there's not a ton of guaranteed money, if any, next season. So they'll probably do right by him if he balls this year. But I don't know if that necessarily results in, hey, let's give Duron a 2 or 3 year extension. Maybe it does. We'll see. Whether the front office does extend him after a big season or not, it doesn't make them dumb, right? This could be a new Duron Payne. There's no more Jonathan Allen. Maybe that was what was holding him back. I doubt it, but we just don't know, right? Let's just see. I'm excited. That's all I know. I'm excited to see what Duron Payne does this year with him being the guy. He's the guy now. There's no more Bama Wall. It's just Duron, right? We don't get to lump him in. He doesn't get to hide behind Jonathan Allen. It's just him. So let's see what he does. MF Quotes writes, if we get Payday Payne, I know y'all remember Payne stopping a whole drive by himself. We will have a top 10 defense. If you're getting that kind of play from somebody on the interior, we are going to be a problem. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know about a top 10 defense. I don't know anything about that. I just know we're going to be much better defensively. DMV Skin 84, or excuse me, 804, writes, the B-Rob is a bum narrative is crazy work. All he needs is a complimentary back that is shifty and can do the things he can't do. If he can stay healthy this year, and that's a big if, I think we will all attest to that. He hasn't been fully healthy in any of his seasons here. The first year, not any of his doing, obviously getting shot, but the other 2 years after that, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And it's a position where it's tough to stay healthy at. Anyway, he's going to have over a stack, maybe hit 1,200. Don't sleep on 8. Watch the tape. He's done good things. This is kind of the camp and the mindset that I'm in, but I get the people that are like, nah, F that. I ain't trying to hear that shit. He left a lot of meat on the bone, and they're not wrong. I just think this whole B-Rob is a bum narrative is crazy work. I agree. Like, I've always said, we know what he can't do. We know what he isn't. So don't ask him to be something he's not. Just go find a guy that can do the things that he doesn't do well. I think they may have done that. I still don't think that he's going to be back next year, unless there's a situation where he absolutely murders it this year. I mean, he crushes it to the tune of like 1,400 yards rushing, was everything that they thought he was going to be when they first got here, and converts every short yardage, is just an animal in the red zone, ends up with like 14, 15 rushing touchdowns this season. He'd absolutely have to crush it. And then still not be overly expensive, which I don't know if those two things run together, right? I don't know if those two things run parallel with one another. Him absolutely going out and dominating in his contract year and still not having a high price tag. It feels like if he does that, it's going to cost him a lot more than what they'll be willing to pay him, on a per year average. If they could get B-Rob back, if he, crushes it this year and they can get him back on a 3-year, $16 million deal, they may do that, But you put up big time numbers. We've seen that the going rate is usually like 8 million. I don't think they're going to pay B-Rob that. Hell, they didn't even want to pay Jeremy Chin. I think he got 6 million a year. They didn't even want to pay him that. I just don't see them doing that at the running back position. So don't think he's going to be back, but I do believe that whole narrative of him being a bum is overblown. And I do think having a bill here might really unlock Brian Robinson Jr. and allow him to do some of the things that he should be comfortable doing and not force us to ask him to do some things that he's not capable of doing, right? Redskin Legend writes, "Hey, Lou, let's not forget who our owner was. The last 3 or 4 staffs have had their hands tied. Snyder was a thief that my way or the highway, all his football folks. Let's not put all the blame on them. F franchises don't win 1990s effing AstroTurf." So this is in response to me when I speak of this group, praising them, but also shitting on the last 3 or 4 regimes. And while you're not wrong about Snyder's impact and how he was so bad as an owner and he put so much stress on the people that were here and often made decisions for them or had a big say-so in the decision-making process, that it altered the way that the team was run, you're not wrong about that. But I don't think Daniel Snyder forced Ron Rivera to draft Jamin Davis in the first round. I don't think Ron Rivera was forced to draft Emmanuel Forbes in the first round. I don't think that, Ron Rivera was forced to draft by Daniel Snyder, I'm referring to, was forced to draft Fedarian Mathis in the second round. Like, these are things that we can't just say that everything's Daniel Snyder's fault. They put Ronald Rivera in charge of something that he should have never been in charge of, which is personnel decisions. Now that's a Daniel Snyder problem, but he knew he was hiring Ron Rivera in a coach-centric manner because he didn't know what kind of coach he would be able to attract here. And in order to attract someone of Ron Rivera's stature at that time, who was well-respected coming from Carolina, he was going to have to give up something that other teams wouldn't have given Ron Rivera, which made the drop more attractive to him. But so if you look at it from that lens, then that's a Snyder problem, right? But once Rivera got here, the decisions that he made altered the course of look, we weren't going to be good because Snyder was here. And that black cloud was always going to be here. But to just say everything went wrong because of Snyder, 90% of the things that went wrong here was because of Snyder. But the 10% that still left was based on coaching, whether it was Jay Gruden not having enough authoritative nature to be able to tell players, this is how we do things. He told DJ Swearinger, stop talking to the media, stop shitting on us in the media. And then the next week, DJ Swearinger shitted on him and the staff again about practice. Like, players didn't respect Jay Gruden. They just didn't. Deshaun Jackson thought it was okay to squeeze this man's nipple and give him a wet willy and shit. Like, your players shouldn't be that comfortable with you where they feel like they can do that kind of shit to you. That was Jay Gruden. He was like their bud. He wasn't their coach. They didn't respect him on that level. So the only coach that I would say came here and was totally undermined by Snyder was Mike Shanahan. He couldn't get what he wanted to get done here because of Daniel Snyder. The other coaches, they came here, they did some good things, but ultimately it was their decisions, it was their inability to get the most out of the players that were here that really tied their hands behind their back as well. So you're not wrong about Snyder, but we also got to acknowledge that Ron drafted those players. It was Ron that wanted Jamin Davis in the first round. It was Ron that wanted Emmanuel Forbes because he could produce turnovers in the first round. That wasn't Daniel Snyder saying, go get me Emmanuel Forbes. Yeah, he drafted, Dwayne Haskins. He came in and took over the damn draft war room and said, no, I want the kid from Bullis. Yeah, he did that. That was 2019. Like Jay was already cooked by then, right? But you're not wrong about Snyder's influence and impact, but we're not letting these other coaches off the hook. That's what we're not going to do, right? We're not going to do that. And yeah, the effing AstroTurf, that was all Snyder, right? Watching that on the Commander's log and watching them talk about the AstroTurf. If you watch the Josh Harris video on Bloomberg, and he talked about how run down the facility was when he got there. Yeah, I mean, it was bad, man. Thank God for Josh Harris. I can't stress that enough. At E3 Cubed. Now, let me preference everything that we're gonna say with E3 Cube. I believe E3 Cube is a Commanders fan. I do believe this to be a fact, but I can't confirm this. I can't substantiate this. Some of the things he says, a little sketchy, right? And we know we've had a lot of Eagles fans in here infiltrating the comment sections. And, people do weird shit on social media where they try to pose as another team's. I don't really understand the psychological advantage of doing that. But, you see people do weird shit. That's more so of a X thing where people do stuff like that. But I think he's a Commanders fan. So, because some of the comments that you're going to see from him may lead you to believe something else. And I actually think he's just being honest. And it's okay. This is the space we created. We want Commanders fans to be honest. This is what I wanted to create, a safe space for Commanders fans to be able to speak their piece. Right? And if you want to have a dialogue, that's what this is all about. Try to keep it as, clean as possible. But, sometimes shit gets heated. I get it. But we're fans. We're all fans, and we all want the same thing. We may have a different way of going about it, but we all want the same thing, right? So with that in mind, when you hear some things from E3 Cubed, I just want you to take it with that in mind, right? He says they can't fall for the banana in the tailpipe with Duron this time. After he gets his contract, he's going to turn back into a pumpkin. Let's get this contract year performance out of him and move on. And again, this is not, as you can see, 17 people like this comment. He is not the only person that feels this way. And I read another one earlier that said, we're not doing this Duron thing again. So it's a lot of people that feel like, hey, let's maximize what we can out of Duron. But by no means do you give this man more money here. I can't say that I agree with them, but I also can't say that I disagree with them. I'm always on the player side, right? And Duron hasn't been a bad player. He's been durable, right? I was shocked that he wasn't available for the NFC Championship game, which forced us to have to play Carl Davis. I'll never let that shit go. But he's been durable. He's been reliable. Has he produced the numbers that we thought he should? No. But he ain't been a bum, but for the money we're paying him, he hasn't lived up to the hype. I will admit that. But if he can do it again 2 times in 8 years, I'd take that. And I may sign up for more. I may be a dummy on this one. I may sign up for more. If he can do it again, I may be like, hey, You can give him a 2-year extension. I'm on board for that. Why not? So anyway, I digress. Let's move on to the next live video, the last one that we will talk about on today's show. This is the Terry McLaurin Nothing to See Here video that I did, essentially, where we heard from the reporter Jordan Schultz, who, like I said, has been all over the Terry situation and talked about Terry being frustrated, which we know how these things go. And so all I had done a video for a live stream was to just reassure you guys, there's nothing to see here. You shouldn't be concerned about any of this until there's a reason to be concerned about any of this. And right now isn't that time. So let's see what your comments were here. Lynn O'Ryan Benvenite 4426 writes, Terry is and has been the face of this team for many years. One of them for sure. On and off the field, he has represented the team in great fashion. He should be a lifer, retiring as a Washington Commander. Get the deal done and watch him and JD5 work. HTTC. I think this comment here, which is why I wanted to talk about it, is representative of 98% of the fan base. I think this comment right here sums up how the vast majority of us Commanders fans feel about Terry. It's really simple. Now, if you could just snap your fingers or wave a magic wand and get the deal done, it would be done already. But that's not how these things work. But this is why you have to understand that this thing is getting done, right? Because we understand what Terry means. I played you the audio on this exact video of Albert Breer talking about why it's getting done and what Terry means to this organization and what he means to the overall fabric of what they've built here in just under 2 years. He's so essential to that. There's no way that he's not a part of this. So I think Lynn O'Ryan Benvenite kind of sums that up beautifully with that comment there. Sonny Rawson 6024 writes, 3 years, $100 million for Terry extension. Look at Metcalf's contract. They got to put him right above that on a yearly average. Remember when, and maybe you guys don't, because I think I might have talked about this on a podcast and not on an actual Washington video. But for those of you who are frequents of the podcast, I remember talking about that trade that the Steelers made for DK Metcalf, and immediately upon trading for him, they gave him an extension, and it was a wild extension. The numbers were crazy, and I was like, oh shit. For those of you who wanted Terry extension, which that was all of us, I said that Metcalf extension might have effed some shit up. I remember saying that. And I never brought it back up, and that's my fault because I should have. But this comment, it jogged my memory, and I was like, I gotta bring this back up to you guys for the ones that haven't heard the conversation. Metcalf's deal, and I don't know the exact numbers. I just remember it being a lot more than I thought he was going to be able to command. I guess I can look it up now. So let's see where Metcalf is. Metcalf is at 30. That's what I thought it was. $33 million a year. Now, you know, obviously what he's actually taking home and what he got in guarantees, you know, the number, the APY is more so for the agent and for us as fans and the media to talk about, but it still means something. For an agent, that's a talking point. You look at DK Metcalf's numbers over the life of his career. You look at Terry's numbers. You look at A.J. Brown numbers. These are guys that he was drafted with. These are peers. A.J.'s getting 32. DK's getting 33. DK Metcalf is not a better receiver than A.J. Brown, but yet he's making more money than him. You don't think Terry's agent is saying DK Metcalf isn't as consistent as Terry McLaurin? He doesn't mean as much to the Pittsburgh Steelers as Terry McLaurin means to the Washington Commanders organization. Are you crazy? And he's getting $33 million. Terry deserves to get every bit of what DK is getting and then some. And to the point of Sonny Rawson, that might be the hiccup in this negotiation, is that Terry's camp is like, DK Metcalf's getting $33 million a year. If that's the case, my guy deserves to be above him, even if it's 33.3, right? My guy deserves to be higher than DK Metcalf because he's better than him. And he means more to your organization than DK does to the Steelers. The counter to that by the Commanders is DK Metcalf is 27 years old. Terry McLaurin is 29, about to turn 30. There's a difference. They're expecting big years in the prime of his career from DK. We think Terry's best football may have already come and gone. And we're not going to pay him for what he's already done. We're paying him for what he's going to do in the future. So you can see where that discussion goes. I still think that that number falls somewhere below DK Metcalf's, but maybe at or above A.J. Brown. That 32.5 sounds reasonable. 30, I've said all along, I thought the number was 31, 31.5, 32, no higher than 32. I could see it going to 32.5, but maybe it's going to take 33 and some change. And maybe you might be right. Maybe 3 years, $100 million. We're going to have another conversation about Terry here in a second. And maybe it's not about money, but maybe the years. We'll save that for a comment that we have a little bit later down in the comment section here. But Dan writes, and this is a good one. I love this one. Instead of calling it PTSD, which we often refer to it as, we should call it PDSD, post Dan Snyder disorder. That's so good. PDSD. That's our disorder, right? That's very specific to us. Nobody else has gone through the shit that we've gone through. So while anybody could have PTSD, anybody can have that. Not everybody has PSDS, right? Or PDSD, excuse me. Not everybody has PSDS. I got to get this right. PDSD. Damn. Not everybody has PDSD. That's specific and unique to just us as Commanders / football team / Redskins fans. Nobody else could have PDSD but us. I like it because his terrible stint of ownership ruined this franchise and our faith in the team. I love it, Dan. I think we need to adopt it. All in favor of calling our PTSD, PDSD, say I. I'll look at the comment section later and decide if the ayes have it. If you don't agree with it, say nay in the comment section. I'll throw my vote in. I agree with it. PDSD, perfect. Felix the Fearless, 1886. Writes, I've been a ride or die, trust the process guy. I've been saying I believe in AP and DQ. But if they mess around and can't get this Terry deal done, then we are right back to where we used to be with a front office who just can't get shit done. Terry is an ultimate commander. Class, character, integrity, stats, franchise records. What more do you want? Why isn't this deal done already? Set the precedent. Show the league, the team, and the fans that this is the kind of player we are looking for. All right. So I'll say this. I understand the fans that want this deal done like yesterday. We all would have liked to have seen this already taken care of. But it just doesn't work that way. if that were the case, you wouldn't have contract negotiations. You would just have teams signing players to contracts, right? There's give and take. We just literally had a conversation about DK Metcalf's contract and how that probably threw a monkey wrench in all of this. If DK would have signed a $31 million contract, maybe Terry's deal is already done. But if I'm Terry's agent, I'm looking at that DK Metcalf contract. I'm looking at the numbers, and I know what the Commanders' rebuttal is. DK's, 2 years younger than that guy, right? He's 27 years old. We're talking about two different. In 3 years, DK Metcalf will be 30. In 3 years, Terry McLaurin will be pushing 33 years old. There's a big difference between the two, and they are not the same. So I get it on one hand, but on the other hand, I think Terry's game is going to age well, and but we don't know that. They can only go off of what age tells us it does to players in this league, and so they're going to get this deal done. But to say, but this is the part I disagree with. I think everything you've said here is spot on. This is the one part. If they don't get this deal done, then we're right back where we used to be with the franchise front office who can't get shit done. I just one deal or lack thereof, as long as it ain't Jaden Daniels, doesn't move the needle back to pre Harris hell, right? And that's not fair to this group. Now, not getting a deal done with Terry, let's say that they can't reach a deal with Terry and somehow they have to trade him. It gets to a toxic place and there's a great deal on the table and they just say, Jaden has shown the ability to elevate the players around him. So we're going to trade Terry, get what we can get for him, and we'll build this thing up organically because we got a guy that can elevate this team, with the players that we already have. That would be a devastating blow, no doubt, to the fan base, to, I think, the locker room, to the process and the steps forward that we have taken. But by no means does it put us back at ground zero. I don't agree with that. But that's a conversation that we really don't even need to be entertaining because it's not going to happen. They're going to get it done. But to say that if they didn't get it done, it pushes us all the way back, I think that's a bit far-fetched. But this is exactly the type of player that you want on your roster. This is the exact type of player that you want as a model for how you want things done. And that's why they're going to bring him back. And that's why they're going to get this thing done. DC Booker. Who writes, Terry's deal will get done before Tuesday. You heard it here first. Well, today is the day before Tuesday. So I'm here to tell you it ain't happening, bro. I've been saying July. I've been saying July for the longest amount of time. And I'm sticking true to my July assessment. It ain't happening, bro. But hey, look, speak it into existence, man. Maybe at 6 o'clock tonight, we'll get news that Terry signed his extension and he'll be at mandatory minis tomorrow. What a wonderful world it would be if that's what happened. I just don't see that being the case. So Ade Smith, this is the one I was referring to earlier, writes, the holdup in Terry's contract could be the length of it. Him being 30 already, you can't possibly give him 4 years. Never thought the number was 4, by the way. It'll be 2 with a possible 3-year altogether with about 80 million, 61 guaranteed. His camp might not agree. So Ade could be onto something here. It could be years and not. And I brought this up because of Ade's comment on the Commanders King show that this could legitimately be a gripe, not about money as we all suspect, but maybe it's about years. That matters too. Like if I'm Terry McLaurin, I probably want 3 years, right? I want 3 years. It might be smarter for Terry to sign for 2 years, but it makes more sense for him to want a 3-year extension because it's more money, right? This is going to be the last massive contract extension Terry McLaurin is going to sign in his career. You want it to be as big as possible. Now, if you want to go with the contrarian view, you take the 2-year deal or extension, and that'll allow you one more bite at the apple, but you got to be playing at a high level still. And the bite at the apple won't be as ginormous as this one, but it'll still be like the one Mike Evans just got, right? Mike Evans just got, what, a 2-year, $42 million extension, I believe. It's good money for Mike Evans at his age, right? To finish out his career as a Buck, as it should. You sign a 2-year deal, you could get one of those in a couple of years if you're Terry. And that's good money for where he'll be at that point of his career. You sign a 3-year deal, though, you're getting more guaranteed money on this final big contract, which is what you want if you're Terry McLaurin. And if you're still playing well, maybe that 2-year extension after this deal is up is still on the table and available for you, right? But I don't want to deal with what could be down the road. I'm worried about, like, hey, I want to get this one last big bite. And the organization might be like, nah, we want the 2-year joint because you might not be hitting in 2 years. So we want a way out and not be still paying you, $30 million. So it could be the years. This could absolutely be the case. Could not be about money. It could be absolutely about the length of this contract. So I think that's very interesting, to say the least. Mask Collector 6949 writes, disappointed in fans in the front office for not recognizing how irreplaceable Terry is. They shouldn't have even let it get to this point. He's a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. Lamb had to go through similar stuff, though. I just thought we were better than the Cowboys. So Mask Collector, I will say right now that you can't lump the fans in with the front office. That's not a fair thing to do. The fans wanted this deal done months ago. So you can't say that the fans don't recognize how irreplaceable Terry is. There's a very small minority that believes that Terry may not be worth the money. Very small. And those fans are only taking into consideration the production on the field. They're not taking into consideration all of the other stuff. The impact he has as a leader, the impact he has in the locker room, the impact he has off the field as a face, one of the faces of this franchise. They're not taking that stuff in. They're just strictly taking into consideration his play on the field. You can't lump the fans in with the front office. And I just want to make sure we're clear here. The front office understands Terry McLaurin's worth and impact. But again, their job is to get the best deal available for the Washington Commanders. Their job isn't to appease the fans by giving Terry and his camp whatever they demand. Their job is to try and get the best deal for the Washington Commanders moving forward. And so they're going to have to figure out what that looks like. But Terry's not a top 5 receiver in the NFL. That's false. Now, again, there's no way to prove that. That's subjective. You think he's a top 5 receiver in this league? Good for you. He's not. We've had this conversation too many times. So I'm not going to go over that. But he's not a top 5 receiver in this league. He doesn't need to be. What he is to us, and I always use the used car analogy. A car that you've had for 7 years, for 5 to 7 years, is worth more to you running than it is to somebody else that is trying to buy it from you. So when you put this car on the market for $2,000 and somebody comes at you and says, hey, I'll give you $1,000 for it, you're like, no. I'll keep that car if you're not willing to meet my demand of $2,000. I'll just keep the car. It still works. I can still drive it. So I'm not going to give the car away. I'm not hurting for the money that bad where I got to just get rid of it and get what I can. It's worth more to me to keep it than it is to just give it away to somebody. So for Terry's worth more to us because of what he's invested. He's built up equity with us, sweat equity. We've watched this man play through some of the worst quarterback play in the entire league over the life of his career. We know what he's gone through playing for the worst organization in football over the last, 30 years, minus the last 2 years since Josh Harris has taken over. So we respect Terry for what he's done and what he's gone through. And we still think there's more left in the tank. It's not like Terry is dragging his ass to the finish line, and we're like, man, I don't know how much more we can get out of Terry. I don't know how much mileage is left. No, this used car still has plenty of good trips left in it. And if you don't want to give me what I want from this car, I'll just keep it. And to me, with Terry, the fans understand that. The front office understands that. He's worth more to us than some other team that might be interested in trading for him. He's worth more to us because of what he's meant to this organization. They understand that. But he's not top 5 talent at the receiver position. You guys have to stop that shit. But again, if you want to promote that narrative, go right ahead. Who am I to try to stop you? Right? So all I'm saying is he may be paid like a top 5 receiver because as of right now, DK Metcalf is the 4th highest paid receiver. But what do I always tell you? The next guy up is usually the highest guy up, right? So Terry's not going to exceed Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, or CeeDee Lamb. He's not. But can he be slotted higher than DK Metcalf? That's what his agent is angling for. And the Commanders are saying, no. He needs to be somewhere between Amon-Ra St. Brown and A.J. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown is at $30 million. AJ's at 32. He needs to be somewhere in between that. And if he gets slightly higher than AJ, okay. That's what they're angling for. And his agent is like, nah, he needs to be above DK. He needs to be the 4th highest paid receiver in the league. This isn't indicative of where he ranks in the league. It's just he's up next. He's up next. That's all this is. If Nico Collins was up for a contract, if Tyreek Hill was up for a contract, if other guys were up for contracts right now, they would be higher. So I only say all of that to say this. They'll get the deal done. And you can't compare us to the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb basically sat out of all of camp and OTAs and everything and got his money right before the season started. I don't think this is going to be that. But again, we'll see, right? We'll see. Derek B. writes, fans who think AP is going to give Terry a bigger bag for past sins of the franchise had better think again. Terry will get paid for what the team thinks he will do going forward. This is very accurate. This is very accurate. And again, Terry deserves right around $30 to $32 million a year, right? Somewhere in that neighborhood. His agent is trying to, get him above DK. And I said at the time when DK, I said, uh-oh, for us Commanders fans, this is not a good contract that DK Metcalf just got. Because Terry's agent is going to look at it and say, okay, that's our starting point right there. That's our baseline. We're starting there. That's where we need to get to. That's the target. He pushed the conversation forward to DK, and you're like, that's tough. Again, there are points to be argued on both sides. DK's younger, but Terry's been more productive. Terry's had to deal with more shit at the quarterback position, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, that age is going to be a big factor. I still think Terry's got good football left in him. I think the organization believes Terry has good football left in him, and they want to compensate him for what they think he's going to do, which is continue to be a consistent receiver in this league. What does that look like? That remains to be seen, but Terry's going to get his money. He's going to get his money. He is going to get his money. That I can assure you of. Let's move on to the 2 local uploads that I had Friday and Saturday. So this was the first of the 2. And this was OTA's phase 3 was completed. We are now heading into mandatory minis, which will start tomorrow. So this was just my recap of OTA phase 3, and just the OTA process itself, phase 1, 2, and 3 being in the books, and what I have gleaned from that as we head into mandatory minis and into training camp. So the first comment, Payne writes, where'd you get that Commander's hat? That hat was the draft hat from 2024. So I thought it was a dope hat. I purchased it, and the hat last year, the draft hat from last year, was garbage. So I wanted no parts of that, which is why I didn't cop. But the draft hat the year before, I got it off of Fanatics. I think it should still be up there if I had to guess. But knowing that a new draft is coming on, that hat may not still be available. I think it's still up there. So just go to Fanatics, type in Commanders hats, and then go through it, and you'll probably see it up there. May even be discounted, being that there's been another draft now since that draft. Mike Hughes 3965 writes, JBB, Javonte John Baptiste, is going to have a good year, 5.5 to 6 sacks loading. So let me stop there and say that I've been sleeping on him. I haven't been a massive supporter of Javonte John Baptiste's. I've even said that there's a chance that he doesn't make this roster because of the depth that they've assembled. I think they drafted this kid, and he's probably a lot higher on the depth chart than I'm giving him credit for. I've already acknowledged that, but I'm going to stick to my guns and say that with the depth that they've assembled, he could be the odd man out. They just have him under control from a contract standpoint, from a contractual standpoint for the next 3 years, being that he was drafted in the 7th round and is going into year 2. It's hard for me to envision them cutting him, because a lot of the guys that they added, the Jacob Martins, the Dietrich Wise, these are 1-year contracts for veteran players that may not be here next year. Whereas Javonte John Baptiste can continue to develop and be here. So cutting him doesn't make a ton of sense. So I don't necessarily see that happening. But I just feel like with all the depth, I don't know if he's going to play a bunch. I could be wrong, and he could take a massive year 2 leap, and I might not be giving him enough credit. If what you're saying is true, I'm way off base on him, and he's going to be a lot better than I am giving him credit for, obviously. Mike Hughes goes on to say, Jalen Holmes, Sheldon Day, Carl Davis, all might start on the practice squad, which makes a ton of sense. Jalen Holmes is interesting because Davis and Sheldon Day both were practice squad guys last year that just ended up having to be elevated on game days. Holmes, however, was signed here and was never on the practice squad. So he's interesting. I think they love his versatility. I see him as a roster guy, personally, myself. So we'll see what happens. B-Rob or Eck, Percy Butler, a vet wide receiver, maybe Andrew Wiley will all get traded for not much, but some late round picks. Wiley might get a 5th. All of this is erroneous. None of this shit is happening. Okay. None of it. So I just have to debunk this right now. Kill this right here. Dead. Dead, I tell you. You're not getting anything for final year of Austin Eckler or B-Rob. Eckler was more valuable 2 years ago when he wanted to be traded from the Chargers, and nobody wanted to give anything for him then. He's now 2 years older, a couple more concussions on his Carfax report. Nobody's traded for Austin Eckler. Nobody's traded you for Brian Robinson Jr. Not getting anything for him, right? Maybe if a guy goes down in camp, a running back or 2 goes down in camp, and somebody wants to toss out a 7th round pick for B-Rob, maybe, if they love Bill that much, but I don't see it. I don't see it, right? B-Rob's not going anywhere. Neither is Eck. Percy Butler, okay, maybe someone is like, hey, we'll give you something for him. But again, last year of his deal doesn't make a lot of sense for someone to want to trade for Percy Butler. He might not even make this roster. There's a realistic shot, and that's why you would try to trade him. But again, if I know you're going to cut him, why would I give you anything for him? Percy Butler doesn't feel like a guy that has any value around the league. A vet wide receiver, again, who are you going to get something for? Who are you looking to trade? Who are you looking to move that has any sort of value? Michael Gallup, who didn't even play football last year? Are you trying to get something for KJ Osborne? You're right. Like, you're not getting anything for any of our veteran wide receivers. That's asinine. And Andrew Wiley is like, we can't talk about how much depth we have and be excited about the depth we've created up front and then get rid of some of it before the season even starts. What sense does that make? Andrew Wiley's not getting traded. He is the best depth that we have. Quietly, Andrew Wiley put together a very solid season last year. Very solid. So if he's not starting, that's the kind of depth you want on your offensive line so that there isn't this massive drop-off like we saw last year when backup offensive linemen had to come in the game. So there's none of that is happening, Mike. None of that is happening. The True One King. Thank you for the comment, who writes, Lou, is this the first year Commanders roster will be hard to predict? Our stuff is watched carefully. Am I right? So let me say this. Our roster may or may not be hard to predict based off of how guys perform in camp and into the preseason. If guys perform at a high level in the preseason, it could be a very hard roster to predict. Right now, I don't think it's going to be very hard, but we haven't seen some of these guys in action. So we can't say if it'll be hard to predict or not. It'll be harder than past years. Yes, I do believe that to be the case. I think I was off by like maybe 3 or 4 plays, like one of the easiest to predict last year. Like I didn't see Colson Yankoff making this team. I don't know if I had Tyler Owens making this team or not. There were obviously a couple more that I did not get, but there weren't very many. It wasn't a hard roster to predict last year. I don't know if I had Jeremy McNichols making the roster. I'm pretty sure I didn't. So I know I was off by like 4 or 5, but it wasn't off like by 8 or 9. It will be more interesting, to say the least. I've said this already. I think, and I said this in this particular video, which is why you brought this up. I said that we will cut NFL players this year. For the first time in a long time, we will cut NFL players. We've been cutting guys that don't belong on NFL rosters that should be playing for the DC Defenders, who will be in the UFL Championship. Shout out to Ed. Next Saturday, the DC Defenders will be playing the Panthers, I think. Don't get me the line up here. I don't know who they're playing, but they should be playing in the UFL. That's not the case this year. We'll be cutting NFL caliber players this season. Yes, people are watching our stuff. You damn right they are. Damn right they are. Doc Black writes, people don't ever note Jonathan Jones ran a 4.3 when he first got in the league. Did he slow down? Probably a little, but he's probably our fastest DB. You're probably right. Even if he slowed down a little, let's say he's running a 4.36, he's probably still faster than any of the other corners that we have on the roster. So yeah, I'd say he's probably still the fastest DB. I talked about this. We added speed to this roster. We're a faster team than we were a year ago. That was one of the points that I made, which is why you brought this up, right? Because I talked about us getting faster, and he's one of the guys that added speed and depth. And I said 2 things: that we got faster, and we added, and we're a deeper team. We've added depth. He checks off both of those boxes for sure. West Rod 91, Rogers 91, who writes, "Hey Lou, what up with?" Oh, that's another comment that I actually responded to from the fight that I went to this weekend. That's a podcast conversation. Lot of shit to get to there for sure. Anyway, I digress. Gold Vibranium writes, Owens, Hampton, McGee, Medrano could all be special down the road. You probably have to define special, but here's the thing that I will say about that Gold Vibranium. The fact that young players that were all drafted here, with the exception of Owens, who was a UDFA that has made the roster and has a potential opportunity to make an impact. These are all young guys that are homegrown products that we are excited about moving forward. It's been a while since we've drafted young guys, and all of these guys that you're referencing are either undrafted or late day 3 picks. McGee's a 5th, Hampton's a 6th, Medrano's a 6th. The fact that we're talking about guys that, were late rounders, undrafted in the case of Owens, and we're excited about the futures of these guys and what they could potentially be, speaks volumes as to, the ability of this staff and this group to find players with talent that get you excited. I don't know if any of these guys are going to turn out to be studs. I'm all in on McGee. You guys know that. I'm all in on Jordan McGee. All he's got to do is stay healthy. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to be a beast, a straight dog. The others, we'll see. Owens has the physical makeup. Hampton, sounds like he's got not only the physical, but the mental makeup as well. And Medrano clearly has the physical attributes. We'll see what those guys are. But McGee, to me, is the one that I'm like, yo, he stays healthy, he could be a real problem. But that's exciting, right? To have guys that we're all excited about that are 5th, 6th, 2 6s, a 5th, and a 7th. No, 2 5th, a 5th, 2 6s, and an undrafted guy. And we're excited about those players. So that's exciting, right? 7 PRS, right? So there's 2 Jacoris on the team? Potentially. I mean, one's making the team for sure in Ja'Cory Krosky Bill. But we could have another Ja'Cory on the team in Ja'Cory Brooks, the wide receiver from Louisville, the undrafted wide receiver who I talked about on this video is a guy that's already making a little bit of noise. So technically, yes, there are 2 Ja'Corys on the team right now. Will there be 2 Ja'Corys on the team come September? Probably not, but we'll see. We'll see. 7 PRS also writes, in hindsight, I think Newton wasn't the best pick. Does he fit? I think it's too early to make that distinction right now and say he wasn't the best pick. I thought it was a steal last year, and I'm not backing down from that because in his first year where he didn't have an offseason, where he was only rehabbing, he wasn't getting any better, he didn't perform at the level, but he stayed healthy, which was important, and he was very solid. But to just take that one season and say that's who he is moving forward, he can't get any better, that's not fair to him. So I can't say that he wasn't the best pick because I loved it. I remember I predicted it, and I loved it. And I thought we got a steal because that guy had first-round talent. The guy that I watched at Illinois had first-round talent. So let's see if that guy returns to form in year 2. Maybe it takes him till year 3 to finally figure it out. Who knows? But I'm excited for Johnny Newton. Yeah, he fits. He fits. Michael writes, Michael Minch says, the Pollard kid from VTech might surprise. I can say this. They really liked him last year. Norrell Pollard, the undrafted from Virginia Tech. Before he got injured, they liked him last year. I don't know if he's going to be someone that pops this year or not, but I'm just telling you, he fits that undersized defensive tackle with some explosion role very well. And he'll be another guy that I'll be looking for this offseason into the preseason to see if he can find a way to make enough noise to get on the radar. But he is a guy that is very intriguing, to say the least. So final video that we are going to get in the comment section of was the one that I put out last, which was the Coach Speak video, where we listened to some clips from some of the guys, the assistant coaches, as they had an assistant coaches media availability day on the final day of phase 3 of the OTAs. So Joe Soy Trio writes, or Joe Soy Trihi writes, Louie, do you think it is possible Louvu can get the Fowler edge rusher role and a healthy McGee gets the Louvu role? No. Louvu is going to be in his spot. It's a part of that 4-2-5 base. And when they get to, obvious passing situations, Louvu is going to definitely be more of a pass rusher, but that's what he was last year, right? They would rush him off the edge in those situations a lot of times. And sometimes they would rush him on first and second downs right up the A gap. But McGee is going to be on the field. They're going to have a package for him, obviously, but it doesn't come at the expense of Louvu having to move, right? I think McGee is, right now they're going to play him as an outside backer. But I think ultimately his role is middle linebacker, green dot, signal caller. That's what they envision him being. So he's more of a Bobby Wagner replacement next year than he is a Frankie Louvu replacement. I think they look at, and they're trying to figure out what some of the guys like Kane Madrano can do. Could he be a Louvu moving forward? Could Dominique Hampton be a Louvu moving forward? A guy you can move around. I don't necessarily know if he'll be able to rush the quarterback or anything like that. But they're kind of looking to see where guys fit. God forbid anything happen to Louvu. Do we have another guy on the roster that can kind of mimic what it is he brings to the table? All right. Thank you for that, Joe Soy. Truhe. J Does 2024. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Shout out to all those who are parts of the MOBB who have left comments that we have reacted to today. Right. It's so great to hear all of our coaches talking the right way. We never have to question what the hell they are talking about, and we don't have to worry about controversy over their statements, i.e. Del Rio. Amen to that. It's just so amazing. Damn it, I love this staff. I think you are a representation of what we as fans feel about this staff. I mean, I think that Del Rio line is so true. Something that you take for granted. Like, that was our existence. We were so used to having some sort of stupid ass controversy surrounding this team that when Del Rio said that dumbass shit, the little dust up statement, and we were just like, what a dumbass, right? But we were so used to our name being in the news for something negative that shit didn't even faze us. We just said, oh, there we go again, right? There we go again. Whether it was Ron Rivera not knowing we could be eliminated from the postseason, or even him throwing one of his assistants under the bus in Eric Bieniemy, right? Telling that one of the players came to his office about Bieniemy, like, what are you doing, dude? Shut up. But we don't got to worry about that shit no more. Nobody's throwing anybody on the bus. Nobody's saying some stupid shit that's going to, raise eyebrows or create, negative headlines and a storyline. People having to answer shit that doesn't have anything to do with football. It's just so refreshing that everything around the building now is about either football or something that they want to talk about that is positive. We took that stuff for granted. We really did. Or other teams may take that for granted. We don't. We just got so used to the negativity and questioning the coaching staff and like, what the hell are they talking about? That it just became second nature to us. Now it's amazing. And that's why I always talk about how much I love this staff, how much I love DQ. And that, you said at the end of this, damn it, I love this staff, because we don't take that shit for granted. We don't. We don't. MF Quotes writes, an Arizona duo backfield next year, Bill and Wiley, so a Wildcat, both of them went to the University of Arizona, would be interesting. I thought Wiley was going to make the roster over McNichols last year, to be honest. I did as well. So in this particular video, I played a clip of our running backs coach, Anthony Lynn, talking about, Wiley having the best offseason of all the running backs this season. this offseason, rather. So year 2, Michael Wiley might be a guy to keep an eye on. We kind of a forgotten man. We don't talk about him anymore. Bill is the new shiny toy. You already know what B-Rob and Eck are. And McNichols doesn't feel like he's going anywhere, at least not for the upcoming season. So Wiley just feels like an afterthought. But Anthony Lynn's like, not so fast, my friends. Don't forget about Michael Wiley. Year 2, more comfortable. He feels like the Austin Eckler replacement. I talked about that in the video. He feels like the guy that most closely resembles what Austin Eckler gives us. That ain't Bill. That ain't B-Rob. That ain't Jeremy McNichols, although McNichols can do a little bit of those things. It's Wiley that feels like he's more natural of a pass catcher out of the backfield. More shifty, can make a guy miss in space. That feels like Wiley. So that was that Coach Speak video. I feel like I missed a comment that I wanted to address with you guys on the Terry video. I feel like I missed it, but maybe I didn't like it. Yeah, there was a comment. I didn't like it, so maybe I didn't want to talk about it. Maybe I felt like it was a bit over the top, so I didn't want to acknowledge it. But anyway, I digress. So before we get out of here, I have a email that I received from my guy Pete. Shout out to my guy Pete out there who sent me this email. This is an excellent email, and he listed a few items that he just took inventory of and felt like sharing with me in this email. So I'm going to read you an excerpt from Pete's email to me. And it reads, the last 10 years or so have been miserable with the football team. It literally got to the point where I could barely watch. This past season was surreal, though. I firmly believe the football gods were rewarding us, dedicated fans, for all the shit we went through. And I think more rewards are coming, as do I. So anyways, he says, after having some time to process last season and this offseason, here are my thoughts. And he listed 7 items. If there's a list and I start feeling listy, I love a list with 7 items. So let's go through these 7 items. He says, number 1, after originally hating it, I've come to love the name Commanders. I no longer want to go back to being the Redskins. Last season was so amazing, and I associate it with the name Commanders. I now want to live in the present with this team, not the past. He is not alone in feeling that way. I still think most fans would love to go back to Redskins, but we also acknowledge that that's never going to happen. That is not possible. So why dwell on something that can't happen, right? So he's like, yo, Commanders last year, amazing. And I've always said that if you win, you'll win more people over with the name. It'll just start to stick and become a part of who we are. For some, they're not going to allow that to be the case. But the more you win, the harder it is to fight back against it. They're hoping, and I think this is what they're hoping. I'm talking about ownership, Josh Harris and company, that we continue to win and people just chill on the name. If they have to go back and change it, maybe they will. But the longer it stays, and I said this from the jump, the longer it stays the Commanders, the less likely it is to change, right? Number 2 from Pete. He says, after initially being disappointed, I now firmly believe Dan Quinn was the perfect hire for this team. I also think he's a lot more like Gibbs than fans realize when it comes to humility, respect, and preparation. Gibbs was a master motivator, and so is Quinn. I so agree with this 1,000%. Like, most of the fan base just looked at Dan Quinn as a retread when he was hired initially. I'm guilty as charged. I wasn't as disappointed as everyone else was necessarily, as much as I wanted Ben Johnson. I was so fixated on us hiring Ben Johnson that when Dan Quinn was the choice, And you could see it coming. I remember I did the video the day before Quinn was hired, and I said, prepare yourself. Dan Quinn's about to be the next coach of the Washington Commanders, so just prepare yourself. But I also went back and offered up a 00 to Dan Quinn because, I don't know if I was necessarily disrespectful, but I wasn't kind to the decision. And so it didn't take me long to realize he was the perfect man for this job. It really didn't. I don't think we played a game and I had already offered up a 00 to Dan Quinn. And I even went back. Remember, the initial video was "Gotcha, bitch," and it's a picture. It's a picture of DQ cheesing like this. And I went back and did another "Gotcha, bitch" video where I apologized and said we were wrong, they were right. And I do think he's a lot like Gibbs, and he's had Gibbs around the building a lot, right? For all of these major announcements, Gibbs has been around, and I know he's picked Gibbs's brain. Remember when we saw the Commanders log last year, season 3, I think it was episode maybe 2, and they were doing all of those things, and they had Gibbs around. Remember, Gibbs addressed the team. It might have been like episode 4 or 5, because Gibbs addressed the team at training camp, and he told them, "Shut up!" But then he started laughing. He's like, "Oh, my coach came out of me." He was in the building, and I know DQ's been. Remember when DQ got hired? Who'd they put on the phone? He talked to Coach Gibbs. I mean, it was a great moment. I loved it, and that was like episode 2, I believe, no, it was episode 1, I believe, when he was getting off the flight with his wife and all of that good stuff. When they were introducing him, that was the first episode, and I think he had Gibbs back for training camp, episode 4 or 5 last year. So, I think he's a lot like Joe Gibbs, a lot more than people realize. Like we got one of them ones as the head coach, man. He's this second time around. I think he's more like, Andy Reid than he is Ron Rivera in terms of this second time around, where he could really do some serious damage. Whereas Andy Reid, didn't win a Super Bowl, went to it once, but lost it to the Patriots, never got back there while he was in Philadelphia, got fired, went to Kansas City, found himself one of these generational talents at the quarterback position, and now he can't stop winning. I think it's very similar that Dan Quinn went to the Super Bowl, didn't get it done, never went back, gets a second opportunity, and now he's finding himself one of these generational talents. And I think we're on that Kansas City Chiefs trajectory where we're about to start winning. So I could see him being on some Joe Gibbs type shit where he's winning 3 Super Bowls in 9 years. JD number 3 from Pete. JD5 is going to go to the next level in 2025. People want to compare him to Lamar Jackson, but a better comp will be Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, but with elite mobility. Daniels is going to be obsessively studying defenses all offseason. He's going to pick them apart pre-snap and post-snap, and he's going to have much more time and comfort to operate this season. Think Peyton Manning, but with wheels and a bigger arm. I love that. And that was kind of the comment that I talked to you guys about earlier, where I said, this comment is something that we'll expound upon later on. I look at that comment, and people always want to associate JD5 with Lamar because of the athleticism, the wiry frame, and that sort of thing. But he's already a better passer than Lamar Jackson. Already. And the way he sees the field, the way he operates with that KI, he's more Tom Brady than he is Peyton Manning even. I think he's got the mentality of a Tom Brady from a preparation standpoint. Remember, Tom Brady was impressed. Do you remember after we beat the Lions and he was being interviewed by Tom Brady post-game, and he talked about the preparation that he put in and being prepared, and you saw that grin on Tom Brady's face. Like, Brady lit up like, this kid's different, man. Jaden has that KI that very few at the quarterback position have. Very few have it. I'm just going to tell you right now, and yes, I'm biased. I'm willing to admit this. But I'm also objective as well, and y'all know this. If it wasn't him, I wouldn't say it. Like, I'm not gonna sit here. I love Terry, and I'm biased when it comes to Terry McLaurin, but I'm also honest when it comes to Terry. He's not a top 5 receiver. I'm not gonna sit here and sugarcoat that, right? So y'all know I'm biased. Like, if it's a tie between him and another guy and they're very close, I'm taking my guy. But I'm also not gonna sit here and bullshit you and tell you that Terry's better than, 4 or 5 other guys. And I'm like, there's no way he's better than them talent-wise. Are you crazy? Jaden Daniels has elite level KI. And right now in the league, I don't know if I would take any other quarterback over him in a late game situation right now. That includes Patrick Mahomes. And that's the only other guy I would consider with the game on the line. I watched this man take us the length of the field. We had to go 86 yards for a touchdown, and he did it in one play. Perfect dime. It couldn't have been anywhere else. If it was slightly over his outside shoulder, it leads him out of bounds. If it's slightly underthrown, he gets tackled in bounds. We got to hurry up and run down the field 45 yards to spike it. We don't have any timeouts. He hits him not only up the field, but leading him inside away from defenders so he can weave inside, back outside, down the sideline for a touchdown. The Eagles knew they effed up when they had to settle for the field goal. They knew they were dead. Even our opponents know. The Falcons knew they lost that toss. They weren't going to see that football again. They were dead. They knew it was over. Tampa Bay knew. That's why they were double spying my man on the final drive of the game, because they knew we got to stop this kid. Couldn't do it. You give Jaden Daniels the football, and LB doesn't like to admit shit. Even LB said in the lead up to the game last year, the NFC Championship game, we can't let Jaden Daniels have the football with the game on the line. Because even they know. He's different, bro. He's different. I'm taking my guy over any quarterback. You give him the football with a minute and 12 left and a timeout. You give him the football with 1:33 left and no timeouts. He's going to go get the dub, whatever that looks like. Whether that's overtime, if we got to have it, down 7, obviously barring an extra point that he can't control. Or we got to have a field goal to go to overtime, or we need a field goal to win, or we need a touchdown. We're down 4. I got my guy. I got my guy. Give me Jaden Daniels. Whether it was the first Giants game, you know how many comebacks he had in his first season? I mean, game-winning drives he had in his first season? Give me my guy. He's more Tom Brady than he is Lamar Jackson. I agree with that, because he can pick you apart from the pocket. That's what DQ said. DQ said, everybody wants to talk about him running. He was whooping ass from the pocket last year. And then when shit breaks down, he can kick your ass with his legs. This is number 4 from my guy, Pete. The top 2 teams' priorities, he said the top 2 team priorities this offseason were protecting JD5 and stopping the run, and rightfully so. I am continually amazed how everything this staff does just makes sense, even if most of us fans and pundits don't get it at first. The talk all offseason was acquiring a stud pass rusher, but this staff knows the road to the Super Bowl goes through Philly, and they're not afraid of Hurts beating them in the air. This staff would much rather take their chances in shootouts with teams like Detroit and Cincy than have teams like Philly and Baltimore keep JD5 off the field by just running it down their throats. I'll really be surprised if they add another pass rusher at this point. What a great comment that one is. All right, so let's dive into this. Top 2 priorities this offseason were stopping the run and protecting JD5. They did both of those things. He says he's continually amazed at how this staff does everything, that everything they do makes sense. And that's kind of what I said, right? Like, we don't have to worry about them not getting things. and us sitting at home saying, we need this, we need this, we need this, do this, do this. They see it too. They get it. We got adults in the building now. We don't have to worry about it. It's going to get done, right? The talk all season was acquiring a stud pass rusher, but this staff knows the road to the Super Bowl goes through Philly, and they're not afraid of Hurts beating them in the air. Let's stop right there. Truer words have never been spoken, right? Like, the I told you guys that our entire offseason was aimed at putting ourselves in a better position to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Whether you want to hear that or not, that's fine. But when it's all said and done, like, the AFC is its own monster. We don't have to navigate the AFC. That's not our problem. We're going to play some tough teams in that conference this year, right? The Chiefs, the Broncos, the Chargers. We're going to play some of the best teams in that conference, but we don't have to navigate that conference for 12 or 13 games of our schedule. Meanwhile, in the NFC, there's some good teams, but the only team that we feel like is stopping us from getting where we ultimately want to be is the Philadelphia Eagles, and they happen to be in our division. And the two things that they were able to do against us that really hurt us last season was get pressure on Jaden Daniels and run the football against us. Well, what were the two biggest offseason needs and priorities? Protecting Jaden Daniels better, which they obviously put an emphasis on. First round pick and trade, right? And then stopping the run. We've seen all the, guys that they've added to the run defense, all the things that they've done, and just getting a healthy Jordan McGee back helps stop the run as well. That's how you beat Philadelphia. Why? Because nobody's afraid of Jalen Hurts. I've always said this. Being afraid is not a prerequisite to getting your ass whooped. But we're not afraid of Jalen Hurts. We're afraid of Saquon Barkley because we've seen him single-handedly destroy us. We're not afraid of Jalen Hurts at all. We feel like we can do enough to beat him if we can neutralize the run game. We just haven't been able to do that. We feel like we can outduel the Philadelphia Eagles if it comes to that, if we can protect Jaden Daniels, keep him upright, and not give up big runs, and not let Saquon Barkley hurt us. We aren't afraid of Jalen Hurts beating us in a 36-33 game. We're not afraid of that. We don't even think he's capable of producing that type of offense. If forced to do so without an elite run game, we don't think he's capable. They don't fear him. They'll much rather take their chances in shootouts with teams like Detroit and Cincy because at least they know Jaden's going to have the football. We've seen him outduel Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. At least he's going to get the ball, and we know what he's going to do with it if he gets it. We'll take our chances having to beat those teams that we know can light up the scoreboard because we went to Detroit and put up 45 points. We know what we can do if we give them the football. What we don't want to see is what we saw against Baltimore. He didn't even get a chance against the Ravens. Because when we needed a stop, they just ran the ball down our throats and said, you don't get to have this at the end of the game. You're not even getting a chance. You're not getting a chance. While he was in the process of doing what he did in week 16 to the Eagles in the NFC Championship game, Austin Eckler fumbled. Now, we could blame Austin Eckler 100% for that fumble, or we can also acknowledge that that wasn't a great throw. Why? Because he was being pressured again. So again, it all comes full circle. I'll take my chances in shootouts against teams like Detroit and Cincy because we've already won shootouts against teams like Detroit and Cincy. But what we aren't equipped to do, at least wasn't last year, is to beat teams that can pummel you into submission with the ground game because we couldn't get the ball back to our quarterback. Well, if the shit goes the way that we hope we've prepared ourselves for it to go, that's not going to happen this time around. Love that from Pete because we're not afraid of Jalen Hurts. Straight jacket doesn't put any fear in my heart. I can't speak for y'all. Straight jacket doesn't scare me. He made some throws last year against us. None bigger than the 4th and 5. Do it again. I'm always going to challenge him to keep doing that shit over and over again. I know Saquon can rip my chest, my heart out my chest over and over again. I've seen him do it. I'm going to make Jalen Hurts make those throws over and over and over again. And if he does, I tip my cap to him. Touche, brother. Touche. I like my chances. I like Frankie Louvu chasing him around. Frankie Louvu has some of his best games against Jalen Hurts. Because if the shit ain't open, if it ain't one-on-one, if it ain't easy for him to diagnose it, he gonna hold on to it. He ain't getting rid of it. Can't make the reads easy for him. We made it easy for him in the NFC Championship game. Number 5 from Pete. This draft class is going to be hugely impactful, even though they only had 5 picks. Amos will be a number 1 corner by midseason, and Lane will have a much bigger impact on offense than people realize. His speed is going to open up this offense big time underneath for Ertz and Samuel, and I think he could wind up 4th in catches on the team. Connolly will probably split reps with Wiley early on like Coleman did with Lucas last season, but he will be a full-time starter by midseason and a stud by the playoffs. AP is so good at finding talent in the mid to late rounds. His first 2 drafts for the team will turn out to be masterpieces, in my opinion. That remains to be seen if any of this comes to fruition. But, I mean, I love the mindset here of these guys that they've drafted and the impacts that they can have. Connerly could definitely, I could see him splitting reps, but I'm just, until he's not the starter, I'm just going to assume he's going to be the starter week 1. Right? This isn't a 3rd round pick we drafted. And again, had Coleman not gotten hurt, Coleman was going to be our week 1 starter. They had already given him the keys to the left tackle position, and he was getting first team reps, and he was taking all the reps, basically. And then he got hurt and wasn't able to come back until week 1, and that's why the splitting of the reps took place as they continued to work him in to give him the reps he needed to get that he missed in, training camp and in the preseason. If Connolly stays healthy, he's going to be taking those reps, and I think he's going to be ready. So we're going to see, how all of this goes. But I love the hype for Amos. I love the comment about what impact Lane can have, right? But we'll see how this entire draft class turns out. And yes, AP is good at finding gems in day 3. Or at least we think he is. He was a part of finding some gems in San Francisco. Why can't he do it here? I still think McGee is a gem. So we'll see. Pete, his number 6. The running back room will be much improved this year. B-Rob got a bad rap last year and is going to run like a man possessed this year. And Bill is going to be a stud as well. That's pretty much how I feel. Like, yeah, B-Rob got beat up last year in more ways than one. And was he at fault for some of it? Yeah. But did he deserve all the blame that he got? I don't think so. So, and you know how I feel about Bill. So, and then lastly, for my guy Pete, finally, even though the schedule is much harder this season, the team will make another late season run and deep into the playoffs. They'll have their difficult periods again, no doubt, and maybe not win quite as many games. But this staff will have them rolling full steam in December and January. It's going to be fun as hell to watch. That was from my guy, Pete. So I'll say this. I don't expect us to go 12-5 this year. It'd be great if we did duplicate that. The schedule's much tougher. And it's a very doable schedule. I've said this multiple times. There are certain pockets where things get a little tough, but there's no part of the schedule that we can't handle. The only part you don't necessarily love is the final 4 weeks being all NFC opponents. But even that is, if we want what we want, which is to be NFC champions, NFC East champions, we got to beat teams in the division and we got to take care of business, right? So the only thing you hate is when you get late into the season, you don't know what your roster is going to look like. You don't know who's going to be healthy, et cetera, et cetera. So, but you want to be rolling, like he said, and Pete said, look, they're going to be rolling by the time, December and January hits. And that's what you want. And that's where those games are. And if we're playing the kind of football that we were playing last year, Now, it got dicey for us, right? You had to eke one by the Saints. You had to eke one by the Eagles. You had to eke one by the Falcons. You had to eke one by the Cowboys. It wasn't like we were out here dominating teams and kicking people's ass and taking names, but we won. That's what was important. We won. We found ways to win. And there's a fine line in this league between winning and losing. And we were on the right. We were on the winning side of that line. And if we could continue that, that's all that matters. I don't know how many games we're going to win. I just want to qualify for postseason play. We've shown the ability to win on the road, right? Will we prefer to play games at home? Yeah, absolutely. You're damn right we would. But just get in. We've seen that this team can be road warriors. We can go on the road and silence a crowd. So just get to the postseason. Just get Jaden Daniels to the postseason again and watch him work. I would love nothing more than to be NFC East champions, to be in contention for the #1 seed and force the playoff staff to come through Washington. But, you know, we'll see. Ultimately, just get to the postseason. Big shout out to my guy Pete for that email. It was extraordinary, and I had to share it. I had to. JLG, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. JLG writes, is there a JCM versus Michael Wiley versus Nichols competition we need to keep an eye on? I don't think there is a competition right now necessarily. And if there is one, it would be between McNichols and Michael Wiley. Bill isn't in this conversation because he's making the roster as a 7th round pick and a guy that they have control over for the next 4 years. They're not relinquishing that control by cutting him. Even if he's not ready, just like Dominique Hampton wasn't ready last year, you're not cutting a guy that you drafted because you have him under team control for 4 years on a very affordable contract. You cut him, and now he's made available to the rest of the league first and foremost. And now you do not have him under team control for 4 years. You can now have the right to put a tag on him, a tender. That's what I was trying. You can put a tender on him like they did Chris Rodriguez, right? They put a tender on Rodriguez last year because he was an exclusive rights free agent, essentially. So they, essentially had the ability to match whatever. He couldn't really sign with another team, is essentially what happened. But you don't have the rights to that player necessarily. Whereas when you got a guy on the contract that you signed to that contract, because once you cut a guy, that contract is now null and void. You have to then draw up a new contract if he is to be on your team, right? So you don't want to put yourself in that position with Bill, and they're not. So he's not a part of this competition if there is one. If they're keeping 4, like if they're keeping 3, Jeremy McNichols is the odd man out. I've already told you guys this. The thought to me is that they're going to keep 4 at running back this year, which means they'd have to trim off fat somewhere else. I'm just looking at the safety position right away. We kept 6 safeties last year? Jeremy Reeves, Quan Martin, Jeremy Chin, Tyler Owens, Defoe, Percy Butler. We kept 6 safeties. You're not I think if you're going to trim off fat, that's the first place you go. Keep 5 safeties instead of 6 this year, which is why I'm looking at Percy and I'm like, oy vey. Because if you want to keep another running back, that you're going to have to pull it from somewhere. To me, that's the first place you go. So I think you keep 4, and the conversation would then be Michael Wiley versus McNichols. But again, McNichols wins that battle unless Michael Wiley all of a sudden turns into this special teams dynamo. They love Jeremy McNichols on special teams. You cannot discount how important of a role being able to be reliable on special teams is, and McNichols is a dog on special teams. So I don't think that's necessarily a competition right now. But if there were to be one that surfaced, I think it would be the latter two of McNichols versus Wiley. But Wiley would have to make a huge impression on special teams coach L to the Izzo, because right now McNichols feels like he's ingrained on the special teams unit, and they trust McNichols in the game as a pass protector, as a guy that can run, down inside the 5. They can give it to him. He has a nose for the end zone, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He does a lot of the little things well, and they appreciate Jeremy McNichols. So I don't think he's going anywhere this year, but we'll see, right? We will see. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie Tee, here on Louie is lurking. Louie's lurking in the comment section, episode number 3. So we'll be back for Louie's lurking in the comment section, episode 4, from the next video I put out moving forward, and reading comments that are pertinent and really reacting to you guys. You guys have been awesome in the comment section, and I continue to encourage you guys to continue to be vocal in the comment section. I see your comments, and this is my way of acknowledging that I see your comments and reacting to them. So with that said, I'm getting out of here. You guys continue to keep your eyes peeled to see if anything happens with the Terry McLaurin contract situation. I doubt it. Minicamp starts tomorrow. Doubt he'll be in attendance there. That's my guess. And we'll just continue to move on, business as usual. And I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Until then, I'm your man, Louie. I'm lurking in the comments. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Peace.